Okay guys, so first game here, opening hand was not great. We do have 3 lands available to us. Unfortunately, 2 of those are Glimmer Posts. This is not ideal because usually you want to hold on to these until after you have several other Locust lands in play in order to get the maximum life gain out of those. So we're going to keep it anyways because we do, like I said, have 3 lands. We are on the play. It's not a bad hand, actually. It's just mediocre at best. We're going to start out with the Plains and Expedition map, and this gives us a chance to hopefully top deck into something else to get that going. My opponent is playing Goblins, which is becoming a little bit more prevalent these days in the metagame, to my surprise, but it's still going to be a little bit difficult for us to deal with if he gets a really fast start. And he comes out with Mod Conscripts, which is a nice sized creature, but it does have that drawback where it cannot attack unless he has played another creature this turn. That means as he approaches the mid game, he's going to get less power into his deck because he's going to need to top deck into creatures in order to keep attacking with his whole swarm. Didn't draw into a land here. We are going to put that Glimmer Post right down and use that to activate our Expedition map. I'm going to find a Cloud Post. In later points in the game, we can use that Expedition map in order to find ourselves another Glimmer Post to give us a bit more life gain. But it's important at this early junction that we get some extra mana into play so we can get these bigger spells going. We do have things like Eyes in the Sky. We are going to have some blockers for these guys early on. He does get a second Mod Conscript, followed by a third Mod Conscript. So I'm going to have to take some substantial damage in the early turns, but we do, like I said, have a second Glimmer Post. We can at least hold off until the following turn after this Cloud Post comes into play and get a little extra life gain off of it. I do get a 2 mana play there with the Prism, and drawing into another Expedition map, and now we're at a point in time where we can start using these to find the Glimmer Posts. We have the Cloud Post in play, and that's going to significantly increase the mana as we get these other Glimmer Posts down. And it's going to be a decent starting point. So down comes Mog Flunkies, and this is kind of fun. I do love the Goblins and the drawbacks that they have. The Conscripts cannot attack unless he plays another creature, and if he does not play another creature, then the Flunkies cannot attack either because he cannot attack alone. So very cool. But going to take 6 here. 13 is not terribly far. Draw into our second color, which is great. Going to, like I said, put down these Glimmer Posts. I am going to kind of beef up my life at every opportunity here just so that we can try and get a bit of a barrier between us. The whole point here is going to be to stall out on life gain until we reach, like I said, that mid to late game where we have an opportunity to really turn things around. So what we're going to do here, again, trying to be a little bit more defensive, going to take some of that mana, pump it into the Prism so we can get this Curse's Accord down and get those in. At this point in time, it's looking pretty good because if he decides to attack all out, we can trade a Centaur with the Flunky and take off a Conscript, reducing the damage and reducing his creature count as well. He does get down the Bushwhacker, which is a great start for him. A really great hand, I guess he had, or a great draw. And we're going to have to take a significantly more damage, but we're still going to be... oh, that was terrible grammar. We're going to have to take significantly more damage. However, we are going to get some options here. I am going to decide to trade the Centaur still for the Flunky. It's going to prevent the largest creature from doing damage as well as clearing it off the board. And then I am going to decide to block the Centaur to the Bushwhacker. And there's 2 reasons here. The first reason is that I kind of prioritize Goblins and how I like the block. I find a creature that stays on the field to be more difficult and can attack every turn, more difficult to deal with than a creature that stays on the field and cannot attack unless something else happens. So by taking this off the board, it's going to give me an opportunity where there may be a turn or two that he doesn't get a creature spell and cannot attack with these 3 conscripts. The second reason here is the fact that the conscripts now will have enough power to kill off the Centaur token. By blocking the Bushwhacker, my Centaur token hopefully stays onto the battlefield. This will give us a chance to populate. In order to populate, you do need a token in play, and if we decide to use Deliverance, which is going to be great in this matchup, then we need to keep at least one of these tokens alive, so we are going to do that. Takes us down to 7, but we do top deck into a third Glimmer Post, which is great. We can put that down right away, and we're going to have an opportunity to use the Expedition map to find the 4th. Plenty of options for plays here. We can on the next turn use the Deliverance. We can also use Eyes in the Sky to get an evasive attacker, as well as making yet another Centaur token. So this game is looking pretty favorable to us at this point in time, even though my opponent does still have 4 cards in hand. Usually that's one of the weaknesses of fast decks like Red Deck Wins and Goblins and Burn and such. They tend to empty their hand really fast and then kind of stall out. They find themselves in top deck mode, which is something I talked about last week. And I think that provides me kind of a favorable point in time. Slutter comes down, not as difficult to deal with because we should be able to make our own creatures. It can be difficult in some manners because it will allow him to kill off some of our key tokens, so we got to be a little bit careful about that, but because we should be able to create our own creature wall here, I'm not too terribly concerned. So attacking through, I am going to take this opportunity to activate the Deliverance by funneling the mana off of the Cloud Post into that, and then use this extra 2 mana in order to activate my Expedition map. I said the same thing, that I made the mistake during game, and I was thinking the same thing, is that I would have enough mana left over to do all 3 of those things, where I could prevent the damage, activate the map, and the eyes. But I'm glad I did it in that order, prevent damage, map, eyes, because that's kind of the priority list, and the fact that I'm 1 mana short here is not critical that I didn't hit this Eyes in the Sky. I can still get it later on, but it was more important that I get that Glimmer Post and get that other Centaur on the field now. So drawing a Prism, we're going to put down the first Glimmer Post. Now this one Cloud Post, it's interesting how you can get enough mana off of just a single Cloud Post, and you can use the opportunity to build up your life base off of these Glimmer Posts. It is not the optimal life gain because there is only 1 Cloud Post in play, but it's still going to give us a great opportunity to kind of stabilize our mana base, and we still have, green off of the Prism, thankfully, and we still have this Forest in hand as well. So we're not really missing our base colors. Going to tap out here and make my play first of the Crusher. My opponent does decide to concede, which I think is not the right play here for this game. I think it was a little hasty. Then again, I don't know what he had in his hand, but if you have 4 cards in hand, I would imagine, I personally would think that you would have something worth playing. Goblin mana curve usually comes in at 2 and 1. There's not a lot that comes in for more than that. But things are really definitely in my favor. I still have the option later on to find that Selesnya, I'm blanking on the name, the bounce land, so I can get yet another Glimmer Post play later on. That will work in my favor. The Crusher's going to be hard to impossible for him to deal with. Goblins does run things like Lightning Bolt and stuff like that for control options to take out creatures so they can swarm over. However, in order to deal with the size of a Crusher, he's going to need to be able to block with almost this whole wall of creatures, and maybe another one as he plays it to deal with it and get it off the board permanently, and at the same time he's going to have to deal with that Annihilator ability. So that's definitely put me at an advantage. The 2 Centaur tokens are creating basically a wall for his goblins to attack into, and Eyes in the Sky will give us not only a bit of evasion to finish him off, but it will create yet another Centaur token. So game went pretty well. I did decide to sideboard in the extra Druid, as well as the Guardian. Didn't get the Guardian at all. There was a lot of things that I thought I could sideboard in here, but the strands could work very well. The arrows could work very well, but it came down to there wasn't a lot that I wanted to take out. There's not a lot of room in the deck, and I think the best options for you in a lot of cases are to take out the life gain, and even those I kind of wanted in the deck because of the fact that early life gain against such a fast aggressive deck is very important. So I did take out, I think, Centaurs in order to make those plays happen. But there you go. We're going to get into the second game here in just a minute. So we're walking into the second game here. Opening hand, we are on the draw, is, again, good, not great. I have to say it's one of these situations where the deck is evenly split between white and green, almost exactly. However, just the simple fact that this was a forest as opposed to a plains almost made me mulligan this hand away. My thinking is that what happens is you look for a lot of the important cards, things like Tristani's Judgment, and those really are the standout cards, and they stand out a lot more than, say, some of the other Populate spells. Usually when you need that green mana, it comes with Curses of Chord, and you can find that through a Prism. Because we are running less of the Horncaller and whatever, you don't need green as much as you need white. But I think probably, and rightfully so, I did come to the conclusion that this was a hand that was definitely worthy of keeping because of the fact that we have a very good opportunity to accelerate into a really early Ulamog's Crusher. Especially because you can basically consider this expedition map to be an additional land. When you put down Cloud-Post on turn 1, you'll see it here. You can follow it up with a turn 2 Glimmer-Post and then have 3 mana available to activate that expedition map on play. So my opponent is playing Izzet Post, and this is the version that has started. A lot of them have started to bring in Rakdos Guildgate in order to kind of lean a little bit more. Apparently, I cannot speak well today. Lean towards, a little bit more in the way of black destruction, and it kind of makes the prisms a little bit less necessary in order to find the flashback costs and teachings and stuff like that. So that's going to go down. I am going to attempt to put out this map right away. He does realize the acceleration that I can get into here and decides to prohibit that. I do use my remaining 2 mana to, however, put down this Prophetic Prism. I think that's the most efficient use of our mana. We have 2 available, and putting down Expedition Map means that we have 1 mana left over that we cannot use. Having this down as well also gives us access to that white menace should we decide that we need to next turn put out something like the Centaur. So opponent taps his blue mana here to do Preordain, puts down another island, and uses that to put out Expedition Map. This leaves me a great opportunity to play something and get around a counterspell. I do decide that I think the right play here is to use Expedition Map to get another Cloud-Post. Again, we're working towards basically accelerating into this Crusher as soon as possible. And you notice I do all of that before my land drop in order to get that Cloud-Post into play. So he also activates, and this is where he gets his first post land, and he's going to put that down again, tapping out his blue mana, which gives me a great opportunity to avoid things like Condescend. I put down a forest here. It really doesn't matter. I was kind of wanting to hold off on this Glimmer-Post to maybe gain a little bit of extra life later on, because this had the potential to go very, very long. But because he did put down this Cloud-Post, I did not have the necessity to put this down. If he didn't do that, then I would want to put down Glimmer-Post so that I could have 8 mana off the 2 Cloud-Posts and get the Crusher into play. But because he put down a Locust Land and those add across the board, I can get that down with the 2 mana left over. So he puts down his own Glimmer-Post, goes up to 25, draws a couple of cards off of Preordain and Compulsive Research, Prism, and is going to use the Evoke on Muldrifter. So an interesting turn there. He does a lot of draw. Not sure if there was a better play there. I don't know what his hand was. But we do not hit another land drop, so I decided I wanted to get this Glimmer-Post down. Again, building up my mana base as fast as possible, and because he has these 2 here, I'm going to get a significant amount of play off of these 2 Cloud-Posts. But I'm going to wait till the second main phase to see what he has in store for the Crusher. He's fully tapped out, so he has no options here. But I wanted to see, and maybe, actually in retrospect, maybe this was not the right play. Maybe the correct play would have been to play these beforehand, because when I attack with the Crusher, he has to sacrifice 2 permanents, and he could decide to sacrifice off his Cloud-Posts. It would be a very odd play if he did. It would entirely be based on screwing me over. I think it actually might have hurt him more than not, but still, you want to take that opportunity. You don't know what kind of player this is or what his ability is as a player, I should say, how good he is. So it may have been one of these things where it might have been a smarter play to get that Horncaller's Chant in beforehand. However, he does leave those on the play, which is going to give me plenty of mana, and I will have extra mana off the Prism as far as white is concerned. So you see here with all these in play, I can simply tap out a Cloud-Post as well as 2 other lands to get this Horncaller's Chant, creating the extra Rhino token. And then I'm going to have plenty of mana left over. I can siphon in here. And I almost wish that I had another basic because I can only make 1 other play here, but I can siphon that in to get Eyes in the Sky, and I'm going to use it to activate and get another Rhino token. Now, there is a little bit of a danger to this if my opponent had decided to be running a main deck copy of Echoing Truth. That's going to be a great card against this deck strategy. However, knowing the metagame and knowing the decks pretty well, I know that 9 times out of 10, probably a little bit more than that, they will not run that in the main deck. That's usually something that is brought in Delver Blue and Mono Blue control as their control option for Storm. Especially when he's running black like this, if he really wanted to get into something like that, he would probably go for Echoing Decay. It might be in the sideboard. A lot of the Izzet Post lists do not run an Echoing Truth in the main, but it is still a risk. However, I wanted to take an opportunity to populate, I guess. I wanted to populate the Rhino tokens while they were on the field, giving it more threats, putting this game more in my favor. You see right here, I have 16 just off of these 3 creatures. I wanted to really make an aggressive play here and take the opportunity to see what my opponent had in store. Even if he is running the copy of or 2 of Echoing Truth, he's still going to need to spend a significant amount of mana. He does get some of it off Cloud Post into Prism, but it was a risk that I felt I had to take in being aggressive. It's just my play style. Some people could argue that was maybe too aggressive, but I think it is the right play because you see he draws into nothing, has no answers, and just has to concede. And this was a very, very strong start. You see it's only turn 6, and I was able to not only get the Crusher out early, but I was able to create 4 of these Rhino tokens.
Alright guys, moving to the 3rd game here, and opening hand was pretty great. It was very optimistic about this. We do have the turn 1 Cloud Post into a turn 2 Prism, and a turn 3 Centaur, which is fantastic. I think that's a really great start. We also get double Curses of Chord, which gives us a chance to get those going as soon as we get our mana base situated. So my opponent is here going to be playing Hexproof. As soon as you see the turn 1 Forest tap, you know it's going to be one of 3 things 9 out of 10 times. It's either going to be the Scout in Hexproof, it will be Young Wolf as an option in Stompy, or if you're coming against Infect, it will be the Elf. So Hexproof is a deck that I personally have not played much. And the more I think about it, this may have been the first opportunity I had to play against this deck. I think it's not a very good matchup for this version of 8 Post. If you look at a lot of the control decks out there, they have options to deal with these Hexproof decks pretty easily. You can target down the Gnarlids, which are very strong when they get going. They also have options, counterspell any Hexproof creatures that they know they're going to have a hard time dealing with. Excuse me, I'm joking over here. But we are built like Green Post. We do a lot of our control through combat damage, and we're going to run into a lot of issues as it comes down to trying to find matchups for our creatures versus their. We're able to create a whole bunch of decent-sized creatures in that 3 to 4 range. However, once this deck really gets going, Hexproof is able to put out creatures that have trample and get past all that. They're also able to put out a number of big creatures because it really adds up fast. So we're going to get the Prism in there as fast as possible. I think we are trying in game 1 to gain a little bit of life and stabilize, get to a late game where we have an opportunity to get a larger creature wall than they have. They are creature-based, but they're a little bit lighter on the creatures. Not as light as Infect, but not as heavy as like a mono-white aggro. So there are some opportunities for us to create a larger creature wall and get some damage past. We also have evasion off of things like the Rift Watcher and the Eyes in the Skies, and we can hopefully do some damage there. But like I said, once the trample gets going, and if we get a Gnarlid, it's going to be very hard for us to deal with. So he gets a fast start here, getting Abundant Growth and Utopia Strawl down. It's going to increase the enchantment count for him, as well as really fix up his mana base. It kind of allows them to get away with running so few lands. So drawing a Glimmer Post here is good. We're starting to look very good as far as getting our Curses of Chords going as fast as possible. We also found a white mana there as well. Turn 3 play, we do have 2 options here, the Rift Watcher or the Centaur Healer. What I went with here is the Healer. I think that it gave us a better opportunity to keep this Scout at bay. If he gets an enchantment on this Scout, odds are that the first time around it's not going to become big enough to get past that Centaur. The Centaur gives us more life, and hopefully would kind of stall things out a little bit more. Like I said, that's kind of one of the main things this deck is trying to do at this point in the game, is trying to stall out. This is a really bad play for us. It is the Gnarlid coming down on turn 3. That's, a very, very good thing against our deck because of the fact that we're not going to be able to really deal with it once it gets a lot of enchantments going. We don't have any way to kill it once it's on the board outside of combat. So if he finds a situation where it's unfavorable for him, it's very easy for him to just leave that at home and not worry about it. So drawn to another Curses of Chord here, which is not great for us, but not terrible. Gives us a lot of options. We do have a whole bunch of Centaur tokens available to us. If we get our Cloud Posts online and we can finally get that going, it could be great. Unfortunately, the big troublesome thing about this Gnarlid is this first part of the abilities that says creatures with power less than our Gnarlid's power cannot block. So at this point in time, you see it came down on turn 3. It's already a 4/4, and I am not going to be able to block it at all. Until I get something like a Crusher in play. So more enchantments come down. You see the Gnarlid growing real fast. He gets double abundant growth, drawing cards into a Ranker there. Now all of a sudden it is a 9/7. It is completely unblockable to me. And this trample ability would have just killed me anyways. So I don't have a lot of options here. This game is actually pretty much over at this point in time. I hate to say it, but when it comes down to it's a lot of like counter magic and stuff like that. If you get something past a counter spell, they don't have options to deal with creatures usually once they hit the board, and that's usually why you wait for like mono blue decks to tap out before you play your bomb. They can bounce it back to your hand and then try to counter it again. But once it hits the board, it's hard for them to deal with. And this is kind of a similar situation. We don't have anything that directly interacts with this creature on the board spell-wise. The only way we're going to be able to deal with it is through creatures. And because it has that first ability, we're not going to be able to block it at all. So this game is pretty much over right away. I can gain some life here. I could put down the Centaur Healer. It's really not going to make a difference here because of the fact that I can't block this Gnarlid. He's going to hit me for 9 the next turn. I'm already on a 2-turn clock. So we're just going to play it out even though this game is over. Try and get him to eat some time off his clock and go into the sideboarding. Sideboarding doesn't have a lot of options for me. If you look, I can bring in the extra fog is what I did. And I do get the option for 3 enchantment removals. And that's nice. That can help me take care of things like Armadillo Cloak at the very least. I think that would be the most troublesome thing. I didn't actually run into it in the second game. He did beat me 2-0. But what it does come down to is the fact that it's definitely a tough deck to deal with when it comes down to it. This it's 12 now. I mean, even a slower clock. Nothing I can do. Could I say a very unfavorable matchup? But if you see something here you think I played incorrectly, feel free to point that out.
Okay, guys. So I know I usually do 3 games, and with this deck, it's a little bit short. The games actually went a little faster than I expected, but I did want to throw in this kind of bonus game at the end here. And the reason it's bonus is because this was a game I played a little bit after I had recorded the first 3 videos. And the opponent was running I would say a casual version of mono white aggro, and I just wanted to add it on because I thought there were some good things that I would like to point out, and just how the deck can work in some of the interactions. So, like I said, bonus content, kind of a casual game as opposed to a competitive one. Opening hand was pretty good. We did have 4 lands. We do hit white mana, and like I had said earlier, I think that's one of the more important colors. And we do hit Prism in hand as well, so we can find a green mana as necessary. Hopefully we find a second one so we can get this Spider in. I did decide to keep it, especially because we are on the draw. It'll give us a lot of great opportunities, especially if we can find a big mana spell. We can get the Cloud Post mana ramped up real fast. So opponent does get that nice first turn mono white aggro play in War Falcon. Going to be a big thing to deal with. We do get some actual nice flyers, and we do have Eyes in the Sky was already in our hand, so that gives us a great answer to that right away. And we can deal with it with the Spider as well. Going to start out with that Cloud Post so we can get it untapped and get that mana going as soon as possible. Now comes Doom Traveler, and this is where it starts to get a little more casual. I mean, the creature base is pretty much standard so far, but the Fangraph is not something that you usually see. I can see, I guess, how 1 or 2 might be a nice thing, maybe sideboard or just if you know your meta very well. But anyways, going to take some damage right away off that Falcon. So now things are getting a little bit more interesting. I draw into a Crusher here. Now I have a couple of options as far as play goes, and I could put just a basic in and get the Prism going. But what you want to know at this point in time is your mana base, and you want to be aware of that at all times. And when I have that Crusher, it means to me I want to get up to 8 mana as fast as possible to get this guy into play. Now, Mono White Aggro does have some options. They do often run Journey to Nowhere. On a much rarer occasion, they will run Oblivion Rings. They do run Unmake, and that's a pretty good answer for the Crusher. However, they are usually very creature heavy, so the odds of them having it are a little bit lower, so you can get that Crusher in and do some damage before they do find one. And I wanted to get these Glimmer Posts down right away in order to give me a chance to get this going, so that when I do find it, if I go Glimmer Post, that's going to put me up to 3 off of Cloud Post plus 2 Glimmer Posts. That puts me at 5 mana on turn 3. And that's pretty good, but we want to get faster than that. So we're going to hope for later on finding another Glimmer Post or a Cloud Post that can ramp this up even better. But we are going to get that first one. I think it's a good plan to get that into play right away. A little bit of life gain is never a bad thing too against an aggro strategy. And it will give us a great opportunity for some early plays next turn. We'll have 4 mana available to get this Eyes in the Sky. So of course going to start with the Prism here, and hopefully we draw into, the ideal draw here would be an Expedition map, because then you could put that into play right off the Glimmer Post and we'd be able to ramp up to that Crusher no problem. But we do draw into Curses of Chord, nothing wrong with that as well. We'll create some pretty nice blockers. A lot of the mono white creatures will come in at 2. They are fast and they can do a lot of creatures. Usually they only get past 3 toughness or higher once those Bone Splitters come out. So he's going to attack through, and I'm going to have to take some damage off this, and no big deal there. And this is, again, where it keeps getting a little more casual, and you understand why this was a later game that I had played as opposed to the earliers. But the Sunstriker is going to give him a lot of lifelink ability, and this is going to cause some issues. It just makes the want for Crusher that much more, because it allows me a chance to eat through my opponent. Running an aggro post strategy, a lot of your control options have to be done through combat, just like in Green Post, and Crusher gives us a chance to basically eat up some creatures. Hopefully he sacrifices some to it, and that will act as control as well. I decided here, you see I am going to go with Eyes in the Sky, but I'm going to wait until he attacks so he does not have an option. He can use things like Unmake and stuff to remove the creature once I have put those bird tokens into play. But I think it's the right play here. You wait till your opponent to attack, then you can cast the Eyes in the Sky. This is going to give us the 2 bird tokens, and I am going to use 1 to trade off for the Falcon. The second one I'm not going to kill off right now, mostly because of the point I'm at 17 life. After this damage I will be at 14, and that's not so bad. It puts us at a pretty good position. You can take some damage right away, but you don't have to be so defensive. We can leave this bird on the field, and this way if we come into something like the Tristani's Judgment, sorry, blanking for a minute there, we can populate a creature token. The bird's also going to provide us some nice evasion. We'll have a bit of a creature wall building up with the spider and stuff once those come down. So keeping that 1 token alive, I think for now, is the right play. So tapping out here, he is going to put down a Seraph of Dawn, and more lifelink is going to be more trouble for us. But we do draw into Glimmer Post here, which is great, because this is going to finally give us enough mana to start getting this Crusher into play. So that's going to go, there we go, that's going to go down, give us a bit of life gain ourselves and keep us in this game. It also puts us up to 6 mana at this point in time. We're going to filter 1 through the Prism in order to get the green, and we can get Curses of Chord right out. This is going to prevent him from probably attacking with these 2. We will just have to take 2 through the air, which is not so bad. We could, if the life total gets low enough, we could use the bird token to chump block the Seraph. However, with the Crusher in play, it's not going to be an issue at all anyways. Keening Apparition comes down, not something we really have to worry about. We don't have any enchantments in this deck. We're going to take the 2 here and then put down the 3rd Glimmer Post, get ourselves back up to 20, and put this Crusher right back into play. We are now going to take the chance to be aggressive. If he decides to block with any of these, that's great. If he doesn't, that's great too. If he decides not to and then attacks next turn, we still have a decent sized Crusher block right here. He has no cards in hand, so that means that the odds of him getting Unmake or Journey to Nowhere are going to have to come from top deck mode. And we're going to probably just take 2 damage off the flyer, and next turn we're going to get a lot of opportunities to kill creatures there as well. I mean, this is definitely swung back in our favor at this point in time now that Crusher, he really is a game changer. I think it's important to note how much Crusher can turn the tide of a game. So whereas my opponent was sitting with a lot of lifelink and sitting pretty aggressive, as soon as we get these centaurs in play, we've balanced ourselves out, and then the Crusher puts us in the advantage. So he's going to be able to do some in the air, but ultimately if he decides to block the centaurs, he's going to have to kill off his own creatures, and then he's going to have to probably kill off more creatures to this Crusher. So definitely finally at our advantage here. Another War Falcon comes down, basically going to be fodder to the Annihilator ability, and we top deck into Tristani's Judgment, which is great. We can use this at this point in time to remove one of his flyers, which are going to be troublesome. Probably the best target here, I think, is the Seraph of Dawn. We are going to be taking 2 damage to that every turn, and the lifelink is going to keep him in this game. So what we want to do is remove that from play and get the Centaur token populated, because at this point we could populate another bird, but it's not a great play. It gives us evasion, but we're sitting in a position where we don't really need the evasion. I think the bigger bodies are the better play here. And we can do that because the Crusher is going to allow us the opportunity to eat through his defenders off that Annihilator. So we're going to, like I said, remove the Seraph here. And this is another reason why I wanted to save this to the end. It's not even a complete game, and I know it's a very janky replay and all, but I think it had some good points, so I wanted to add it on the end here. But we are going to remove that here, and that puts us in a great position. It's 1 less blocker, it's 1 less thing you can sacrifice to the Annihilator, and we're going to get a 3rd Centaur token that we can attack with next turn. What happened here is he decided to not concede, not do the lose connection thing, but just not make another play in this game. So it's not great sportsmanship. I don't know. A lot of people are so opposed to the concede button, and I don't see why. Just concede. It's the respectable thing to do and not waste everyone's time. But again, I think this was a decent game. It showed a lot of important things about the impact of the Crusher, the speed at which it can come into play, how you want to pay attention to your mana base to get that going, how you want to keep tokens alive in order to use it later on for populate abilities and whatnot. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Yeah, that's it.